When you live with diabetes, food choices matter a lot. So today, let's talk about what foods to avoid when you live with diabetes. Because avoiding those frustrating blood sugar spikes makes life so much easier. I'll share what I personally avoid, what I only eat in small amounts, and then what I only eat if I pair it with a fiber, a protein, or a fat. And this is what really works for me if I want to keep my A1C below 6% without too much work. But here's the thing, I actually do not believe there's anything that we can't eat with diabetes, except for poison. Still, some are just not worth the blood sugar headache, and I'll show you exactly which ones I choose not to eat. And the first type of food I choose to stay clear of is liquid carbs. A lot of these liquid carb options will hit your blood sugars super fast because most of them don't have any fat or fiber to slow them down. That means that things like soda, juice, smoothies, milk, and sports drinks can cause a big blood sugar rise within minutes. Even things that are advertised as being healthy, such as smoothies or freshly squeezed juice, are in reality just concentrated sugar. I actually used to be a really big fan of smoothies, but after I've repeatedly seen how quickly they can increase blood sugars, I no longer think they're worth it. My simple rule is if it's sweet and if it's liquid, it's just not for me. And the second food that I stay completely clear of is what I call the hidden sugar bombs. So it's food that looks healthy on the outside, but once it hits the bloodstream, it acts like little sugar bombs. And these are sneaky because they're often sold as better for you options, but when you then check the label, the sugar content tells a completely different story. Some of the biggest culprits, in my opinion, are breakfast cereals, flavored yogurts, sweetened plant milks, granola, as well as canned fruit and syrup. For example, a small flavored yogurt can have more sugar than a candy bar. And your body doesn't care if the sugar comes from real fruit or from candy. It's all glucose once it's digested. Even things like almond milk can really surprise you. 1 cup of sweetened almond milk can have over 10 grams of added sugars. That's basically 2.5 teaspoons of straight up sugar in what most consider a healthy option. I do like yogurt, and I actually also really like almond milk. So what I do instead is that I buy the plain unsweetened version. And then I add a little bit of stevia or add some berries or even a dash of vanilla extract. That way I control the flavors, I control the amount of carbs, and it can also help me avoid those nasty blood sugar spikes after eating it. My rule of thumb, if the label says flavored, sweetened, or made with fruit, I'll flip it around and then I'll check the carbs. If it's over 10 grams of sugar per serving, I'll leave it on the shelf. So yeah, not all healthy foods are actually blood sugar friendly. And once you start measuring your blood sugars and tracking how they respond to different types of food, you'll get a good idea of which food spikes you. That was the first category, all those things that I choose not to eat. And the second category are those things that I choose to eat, but in smaller portions. And the first thing that falls in this category are those classic comfort foods. So these tend to be very high in carbs. And if I eat a large portion, unfortunately, it's really hard for me to manage my blood sugars. They just raise my blood sugars faster for what I can bolus for. Here I'm talking about bread, pasta, rice, potatoes, and crackers. So basically the comfort food group most people love. And here's the thing, I don't cut these out completely, but I've just learned that if I do eat them, portion size is everything. For example, a standard portion of pasta is around 42 grams of carbs. And then if I double that, well, then all of a sudden I'm consuming 80 grams of carbs in one sitting. So sometimes I only eat half a serving, or I swap it for a low carb pasta option. Same thing with bread. I love bread. I love baking bread. I love eating bread. And a good slice of sourdough can be everything. But the difference between having 1 slice and having 2 slices can really mean the difference between a soft blood sugar increase or a steep spike. So I choose to eat them in moderations, or I pair them with fats or protein, or I swap it for a low carb option. And I do experiment a lot. Everyone's tolerance is different. I know that for me, I can handle a small portion of pasta better than potatoes, for example. But you have to learn your own patterns. So yeah, these foods aren't off limits for me, but they do come with a set of rules. For me, those rules are smaller portions, extra fiber, and a solid protein source. The next group is sweets and naturally sweet foods. I do love these, but I treat them with respect. These include cake, cookies, candy, ice cream, fruit, as well as dried fruit. I eat this occasionally, but I do plan ahead. I bolus early, so that means I take my mealtime insulin, and I don't stack them on other carb-heavy meals. You just heard me bundle fruit and cake together, and I do treat fruit with a great level of respect because in large portions, it can really hit the blood sugars hard. But not all fruit hits the blood sugar the same. Berries are usually pretty gentle on blood sugars, but something like tropical fruits, pineapple, or mango can cause a huge spike for me. And dried fruit, that's one of the biggest traps. It's so concentrated that a few pieces can easily be 20 to 30 grams of carbs, and it's easy to overeat. So instead of using it as a snack, I'll sometimes use them to treat low blood sugars. So my rule for sweets, cake, and a lot of types of fruit is pretty simple. I treat them as a special guest, but not as a permanent roommate. For me, it goes down to portion size, mealtime planning, as well as balance. On a daily basis, if I'm craving something sweet, I'll usually reach for the Greek yogurt, sweeten it with stevia, maybe as I mentioned before, a dash of vanilla, or protein bars or a cup of tea. Just enough to satisfy the craving, but without the blood sugar spike. Now let's move to my last category, those foods that I choose to eat, but only when I pair them smartly. And I want to start with breakfast foods, because a lot of these sound healthy. They are healthy, but when eaten alone, not paired correctly, they can really spike your blood sugars. I'm talking about yogurt, oatmeal, cereal, and fruit. These are all perfectly fine foods. They just need some support. Let's take something like plain oatmeal. Sounds healthy. It is healthy. It is actually really good for you. It's high in fiber. It can make you feel full for a long time, but it is also a carb. So what I usually do is that I pair it with a protein or fat or both. So protein could be protein powder or egg whites. I could add nut butter or flax seeds just to also up the fibers a little bit. Okay, I know egg whites sounds super weird, but if you cook your oatmeal fairly dry, you can then whisk in liquid egg whites, and you just have to trust me on this one, it really works. Same thing with yogurt. I choose unsweetened Greek yogurt, and then I build it up from there. I'll add some berries, a little banana, again, portion size is important here, and then I add nut butter. So nut butter is a fat, and it can slow down how quickly that yogurt and the fruit hits the bloodstream. Fruit is another big one. Even if I have it in smaller portions, some fruits can really hit my blood sugars hard. So what I found is that if I add a fat, it can really ease in the blood sugar impact. So for example, slices of apple with unsweetened peanut butter, it's delicious, and I actually don't see a harsh blood sugar impact. When I started pairing my breakfast carbs with the protein and fat, my mornings just became so much easier. So if you love these foods like I do, keep them. Work on your portion size, work on combining them with the right amount of fat and fiber, and then of course test things out, write things down, find out what works for you. Now let's move on to the next thing in this category, and those are the starchy carbs that we generally think of as slow absorbing carbs, which they are, but on their own, they can still cause a spike. These include sweet potatoes, beans, lentils, and quinoa. They're all full of good stuff, fibers, minerals, even protein, but they're still carbs. For example, I love sweet potatoes. How good are they with a little bit of salt and cinnamon? So delicious. And they're full of good nutrients, but if I eat them alone, I will see my blood sugars shoot up. So I'll pair them with a lean protein. Perfect dinner. So for example, poultry, chicken, turkey, or fish, a little bit of avocado on the side, maybe a little bit of olive oil. It tastes great together, and it'll just smoothen out that blood sugar impact. Same thing goes for beans and lentils. They have a lot of fiber, they're really good for you, but if I eat a large portion, I will see my blood sugars shoot up, also get super bloated, but that's a different issue. Rice and quinoa are also tricky. Both are healthy in moderation, but I would say they're better when surrounded by non-starchy veggies and protein. So my rule is simple. Starchy carbs aren't bad, they just need company. So I find that if you combine them with fat and protein, the blood sugar impact is just a little bit more gentle. And finally, we have the snacky carbs. So the little treats that we grab between meals to keep us going, that seems harmless enough, but they can really wreck your blood sugars. I'm talking about toast, crackers, rice cakes, granola bars, even popcorn. These are the foods that sneak in quick carbs when we're not paying attention. I mean, toast can be fine, but I always make it count. I'll top it with eggs, avocado, or nut butter instead of jam. And honestly, I most often choose a low glycemic option, such as a Seagull toast. And when it comes to the crackers and the rice cakes, I find that if I eat that by itself, my blood sugars can really shoot up, even in smaller portions, and often I end up being hungry again 30 minutes later. So what I do instead is that if I eat it, I pair them with cheese or hummus. That tiny bit of protein and fat can really slow down everything, keep me satisfied for longer, and prevent my blood sugars from shooting up. So it's not that any of these foods are bad, they're just a little better with a partner. And I feel like pairing isn't about restricting. It's about allowing us to eat the foods that we enjoy without seeing those blood sugars go through the roof. And I hope that's your overall takeaway from this video. It's not about what we can't eat, it's about what we choose to eat, or I guess choose not to eat as well. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, leave me a little comment down below this video. Also, you can check out more videos from me on life with diabetes right here. And I have another ask. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, please subscribe to my channel, turn on notifications. That is that little bell. That way you'll be informed whenever I post new content. You'll never miss a thing. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.